That looks like your New York apartment.
I wish this was New York apartment. This is a Los Angeles hotel room, but I don't have my microphone, so I apologize for poor audio.
It's all right. I can hear you, but I can also hear Cersei in the background.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I told him it was 8:30. I don't know what to
All
do
right.
with the family.
All right. No worries.
Leaving right now.
It's okay. We can
Out of our hotel room.
I'm timely, and my wife is not timely.
uh
This is a dynamic in our relationship.
Facts.
yeah.
Okay. Love you. You should
Love you.
pull up your shades, turn on some light.
No, I think I look misty. Oh, now I look like I'm being interrogated.
Okay. Love you.
Love you.
Oh,
Okay,
Let me find where I put my coffee.
text me. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Here we go.
Action. It is November 10th. Welcome to the Grit. What are you doing in Los Angeles?
Oh, I teach up in Los Angeles on the Thursday. On the Thursday, me and daughter take the train up. And then have you ever been to LA Central Library?
I don't think so.
It is incredible. It is like a masterpiece, and the kids, they basically have a kids floor, and it's like a Harry Potter room, more or less, not in the fake kind of Universal Studios way, but like a proper, like, yeah, really cool design, good old design, lots of tons and tons of books. So we do first part there, then usually wander around. And these days it's been an architectural discussion. So learning about friezes and columns and neoclassical and the elements of design. So yeah, Cersei had work up here, so just stayed the night and headed back on the train today.
I feel like libraries in America or Southern California, anyways, have had a revival. Like they used to be a huge deal prior to our youth. Probably it was a huge investment for the city, and now I'm rediscovering them with Austin, and they're totally updated, like you're talking about. There's one near us that has, I wouldn't call it Harry Potter, but it is definitely like a different world. Like you're
Yep.
entering a different world in the kids section. There's a giant aquarium on the entirety of a wall. All of these places you can go climb to with little cubby holes for reading and stuff. It's incredible.
It really is incredible. Like, I'll tip of the cap to the Library Association of America or whatever their organization is, because yeah, libraries, when you don't need them, which I feel is after college, you stop going to libraries, and then you have kids and your kids get to a certain age, and then you need the library again. You need a place that's not just, whatever, out and about. Sometimes you need, and of course, like reading and all of it. And yeah, they've really done a good job, I feel, of whoever's doing libraries these days. Pretty good.
Well, the idea, we don't even need a library period at this point because everything's on the internet and you can access it digitally. So, but the idea of creating a community environment for everybody to kind of come and get together is still super valuable.
But even as it relates to information, I had a buddy kind of co-teaching the architectural part yesterday. He's an amazing autodidact, but he was trying to find resources for all the elements of classical architecture, and he said there was like one specific thing that he was trying to figure out, if it was, I can't remember what it was, like a triglyph or something, if it was here or here on a building. And the internet, there's too much information, right? And there's too many competing. And so he remembered he had an old architecture book. So he went and he found it and he opened it up, and it was the perfect page, the perfect drawing, the perfect description of exactly what he was looking for. Where I think, our modern time of everything is available, but everything is being available is sometimes, well, which one of these things is right? And I think books back in the day, you used to have, there was a form and function,
vetting process.
and a vetting process. Yep.
Yeah. There's too much white noise now on the internet.
Mm.
Well, as it relates to reading, I have copies of Surfing World issue number 421 available in my garage to ship out to anybody in the United States who wants a copy. Sean Doherty from Surfing World sends me a couple of boxes of these to be able to distribute them to people in the US so that they don't have to pay $20 for an issue and then $30 for the shipping to get that issue. You could just get them directly from me. I do it at cost, so they're just $20. Yeah, go to surfsplendorpodcast.com if you want an issue. They're limited. I think we get 30 or 40 or so of them. So they're pretty limited in quantity, but if you want one, it's
The
available now.
simple joys of holding a surf magazine in hand and flipping through leisurely will make, of course, the person who has done that feel lightly nostalgic, maybe, but also people who didn't really do that. Like, there's some pleasure to it other than swiping, of turning and being able to sit and really stare at an image, or I don't know, there's something wonderful. And not that they're like, yeah, I mean, I guess in the same way that records used to be nostalgic, and then people realized, or people knew all along, oh, the sound quality of a record, of a disc, is different, right?
Yeah.
It has different components, or whatever, however that's made. So it's not necessarily better or worse, but it's different. Where I feel like looking at a magazine is not antiquated anymore. It's different. It has its own real pleasure.
And it's not the same information in a different form. It's totally different information. Like the stories being told there are not available anywhere else, full stop. So that's
Yep.
the only place to get them. As amazing as technology is, and the fact that, planes can fly and that internet information gets passed up into outer space and back down, and we can have this conversation remotely with video and all that. There's nothing that blows my mind more than vinyl music coming out of grooves that are scratched into vinyl. That blows my mind, that somebody can create music and then go, I want to translate this to other people around the world. So here's how I'm going to do that. Take this piece of vinyl, scratch into it, and that music will come out of the other end.
A needle is going to go along those grooves and then play
Create a friction.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's funny.
And if I want this note, I make this scratch. And if I want that note, I make this scratch.
It's
Crazy town.
It's totally true that I feel there's certain things like that, technology wise, like the idea of thrust in an airplane and all that, right? Like, okay, whatever. I guess I kind of get it, but it's also it's so science fictiony that you can take a metal tube and throw it in the air and fly across the world. Like, my brain doesn't even have the beginning starting point to be able to really comprehend that. But with things like records, and I remember the fax machine, when I first discovered the fax, and I was like, of you're taking words and you're scrambling them up and on a wire, and then it's coming out words. Like, for some reason, telephone didn't shock me as much, but the fax really got me. I was just like, couldn't get my head around, how is this working?
We're living the technology era, multiplied and amplified so quickly. Our human brains really aren't meant to be able to process it all. There's a couple of geniuses, of course, responsible for creating that, and they understand it. But for us plebes, it's like our brain isn't meant. This is like me trying to explain something to my dog, and my dog just staring at me. That's how I feel when I'm trying to understand a vinyl record.
It's a perfect way when AI kills us all. We'll just be sitting there gazing into AI's eyes, just all dumb and off with our heads.
Totally. I honestly feel like sometimes I'm going to wake up from a dream.
Yeah.
Like, this is all like the flight that I took 10 years ago. That was a dream too. Like, it's all a dream.
Yep. The Matrix.
Well, got a bunch of listener feedback I want to read to you. This one I think was in reference to a barrel or not from 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Let me grab my phone real quick to turn it off. It's
okay.
1 second.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Awful light. The wife and her awful light too.
She doesn't know anything about podcasting.
She knows nothing at all.
Okay. Quote. I had to pause the podcast when I found out that Chaz wore shoes with his wetsuit. A man who lays claim to knowing style should know better. There are no shoes that can ever be worn with a wetsuit other than the wetsuit booty, or he calls them boots. There is one exception. Thongs, flip-flops, not the turtle ones, can be worn, and only if your wetsuit top is off and rolled down to your waist. Anything else is a massive faux pas and instantly identifies you as a kook for wearing shoes with a wetsuit. It's Val AF. If Chaz's poor little feet can't cope with crossing the railway train tracks, then there's only one answer. Spend less on your Gucci loafers, and more time barefoot. Chaz is now fully Val until this crime against style is rectified. Start work.
Disagree entirely. The flip-flop is the mark of a Val. Never, ever, ever wear a flip-flop or sandal with a wetsuit. The way you do the shoe, you don't like put socks on and lace it up and stuff. You have one of your, which already should be like a low profile Vans-esque, right? Like my personal track crossing shoe now is a Nike Kill Shot, which I can't believe that Nike still has a shoe called the Nike Kill Shot, which
great
yeah,
point.
yeah, but it does. The Nike Kill Shot is a low pro older tennis shoe. But you wear this shoe, so you curate like any good thing. Things cure, right? You don't just pull something out of the bag. If you pulled brand new shoes out of the bag and put them on with your wetsuit, sure, you look like a full-on barn. But your low profile shoe that you've now been wearing for a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years, right? It's really blown out. It's dirty. It's filthy. Like it is a bad shoe. That's the shoe when it's cured enough. You say, okay, you are now my train track crossing shoe. You put it on fully unlaced, of course. Definitely wetsuit down. I've never had my wetsuit up and shoe on. So, I mean, that is absolutely factual. But you have your dirty shoe, you wear it. That first time it feels a little weird across the train tracks because it's all dry. You come back, it's now filled with your wetsuit gush. So it gets all like, wet and whatever. Then you leave it outside, it gets salt crusted. You keep doing it, and this now is its own form. Your track crossing shoe is its own form of fashion. You have to take it seriously. You're not wearing just any shoe. It's a specific shoe, cured, and then it gets re-cured, and you get another 6 months to a year out of your track crossing shoe.
Wow. Okay. So this was not happenstance. This was all the specific shoe was all thought of in advance.
Exactly.
Fit. Okay. Got it.
I buy a shoe knowing well it is going to become a future train track crossing shoe. For example, right now I'm in a pair of Hello Kitty Nike Air Prestos. These will never become a train track crossing shoe. These will get retired when they retire.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, this has all been an ad for Nike. Nike.com. Use promo code SURF if you'd like to save 15% on the kill shot. We could cancel gas chambers, but can't cancel kill shot.
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, a bunch of people chimed in after the gas chambers conversation too. I forgot to mention it to you, but they're like, duh, it's called gas chambers because they're death pits. Like the surf spot is a death pit that you are falling into. And so it is in reference to the Holocaust stuff, but it's also, shouldn't be canceled was the main consensus.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad we got to the bottom of that. I think we also need to identify the length of the number of meters or feet that you are allowed to walk in a wetsuit, because I would argue if you need shoes, you're going a long distance or over train tracks where it's like, a surface that needs a little bit of protection, but you should not be walking more than, I don't know, 50 yards in a wetsuit, full stop.
I'm going to double that, but then cap it there, 100 yards, one football field. You can walk a football field if needs be. And I'm talking not like to the start of the parking lot or something. I'm talking from car to water's edge can be 100 yards, no more.
Otherwise, I'm bringing a bag and a towel to change right when I get out of the water and walk up in dry clothes.
Wife and I, so the place that gets parked at to cross, then this is, I'll admit, very lazy, but when I roll down the hill to park at the train tracks, it's like, I'm going to say a half mile as the crow flies, right? So this is not a long distance. I should just walk it. The other day, decided, I'm just going to walk this. And as you stated, brought a walk down in, shorts and whatever, changed on the beach, walked back in shorts and whatever, and almost blew my shoulder out of socket because when was the last time you carried 2 wet wetsuits for 3/4 of a mile?
Never.
I'll tell you what. Yeah. Wife said to me, you carry my wetsuit, I'll carry the bag. And I said, great, no problem. I draped my wetsuit over the nose of my board, her wetsuit over the tail. And I thought, I'm going to use this as a little workout. So I was shifting arms back and forth, woke up the next day, and my left surgically repaired arm, I'd swore that I'd put it out of socket. It hurt so bad where I thought, man, who knew?
Yeah.
Wetsuit.
Well, you're getting older. I mean, I hate to admit it, but that would not have hurt you when you were 29. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird as you get older and you think that you're still young and you do the things of your youth, or that you wouldn't even think of doing in your youth, or not even athletic endeavors. Your body freaking hurts in weird ways, man.
Yeah.
I drove my car longer than normal. I had this pain in the back in my shoulder for literally like 5 days. And I'm like, Lauren's like, what did you do? I'm like, I literally drove to San Diego one day. That was it. And back, so it's 4 hours in the car.
And you're done.
Wrecked.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yesterday, I did like laps around LA and didn't get into a car all day. Just probably walked a good 5 miles yesterday on concrete and just feel like my bones are going to break in half today.
Yeah. Concrete is damaging.
Walking in a city is enough.
I hear, Kelly Slater or Shane Dorian on the Rogan podcast recently talking extensively about all this body work that they do. And I was always like, I guess they're high level athletes and surfing 60-foot waves or whatever it is. So it makes sense. But now I realize that so much of that conversation is just maintaining an aging body is really what it's about as much as anything else,
I'm waving the white flag. I'm decided only to do athleticgreens.com/surf. I mean, I'm sorry, ag1.com/surf.
Drink.
And drink ag1.com. I thought you were telling me I'm also going to drink. And yes, that was the second component. I'm going to drink ag1.com/surf in the day and drink alcohol at night to deaden the pain. And that is going to be my cycle. And I'm going to roll right to the grave.
I like it. That is a smart cycle. drinkag1.com/surf officially is the URL, which, by the way, Rogan, I don't listen to Rogan that much, but I did listen to that Shane Dorian episode, and he's hyping AG1. I think he has for a long time because I have heard it in the past as well. But I'm like, if he's on the program, it's good enough for me, man.
I haven't heard Rogan hype drinkag1.com/surf yet. Be really great if he could drop in the /surf there just for one episode. If you could use our just once, it'd be nice.
He has his own slash.
Sure, but if I was Joe Rogan and had that much audience and was making that much money, I would throw out different portals from time to time. I would say,
I agree.
I'm going to use this one today. I'm going to use this one today. Why not, Joe?
He's a man of the people. Come on, man. But I did feel like, brothers in arms, knowing that he's drinking that daily too.
Did he pitch better than us?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
He was reading from the script, but I did still believe him.
Well, and here's the thing about Joe Rogan, though. Joe Rogan is doing drinkag1.com/surf, yes, but he's also doing whatever the in vogue expensive health thing is, right? He is doing the cryo thing or the stem cell thing or whatever is like the hot cutting edge I'm going to live forever thing. He's doing that on top of AG1. I feel that you can believe us more because all I'm doing is AG1. And so if I'm alive for the next podcast, it is basically solely thanks to this one product.
It is not related to you eating 99% elk meat.
Exactly.
In your diet. The other 1% is drinkag1.com/surf. I agree with you. You are made up of drinkag1 and vodka.
Yeah.
That is your entire constitution. Okay, more feedback and also expert feedback, as we often get, and we are able to share here from our expert listenership, not from our own expertise. But DLS, Chaz is mistaken about car insurance. If you have, quote, comprehensive auto insurance, which most everyone does, it really doesn't matter what you do with your keys. You can leave the keys in the car and the car running, and if the car is stolen, you are covered. There's a lot more to read here, but did you have comprehensive coverage?
Do I?
Yeah, well, remember you got in trouble for backing into somebody, even though it was
Oh,
50-50?
no, not comprehensive, but I did have
Liable.
I didn't have just liability. It was like a middle tier of something.
Gotcha. Okay. As someone who has not only read carefully, but actually drafted a handful of those standard terms and conditions / terms of use agreements, let me confirm that when I am confronted with one of those in my personal life, I don't spend 1 second reading. Just show me where to click. Read further only if you want a little legal history, which I do. There was a concept in law called contract of adhesion. This basically meant that if you had no real choice except to sign an agreement, you could offer this as a defense to being bound by its terms since you lacked the required intent to be bound, which is fundamental to contract law. Remember back when buying software meant that you actually bought real physical discs? These discs were typically shrink wrapped with other items such as the manuals. An agreement was visible under the shrink wrap. You accepted the terms of the agreement by tearing open the shrink wrap. The concept of a shrink wrap agreement was challenged in the courts, essentially as a contract of adhesion, but the courts decided they weren't going to undo all these software agreements, and after a small kerfuffle, the way was paved for click wrap agreements, and then click through, and then eventually browse wrap, which means you agree to the terms merely by browsing the web page. Who has such nefarious browse wrap contracts? Well, Beach Grit for one.
Yes.
So there you
Happy.
go.
That is epic. I'm so glad that our browse wrap is so, yeah, you are both implicit and complicit in everything we do at Beach Grit.
And just further confirmation that when it seemed like we were giving bad advice to not read the terms and conditions or whatever, turns out it's good advice. Don't read them because you're covered if you ever need to get out of that.
Man, I love our expert listeners. Like, is it Dax Shepard who has his armchair expert
Mm-hmm.
uh podcast? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
ours is so much better than him because it is expert
I agree.
podcast.
I agree.
Not us, them. You.
Okay, couple of things to discuss out of the surf world. Do we discuss Laura Eniver's Guinness record or Bethany Hamilton's breaking of her partnership and contract with Rip Curl?
Let's lead with Laura Enevar's. This is currently staggering the surf world. All these revelations.
Okay, well, let me give the listeners the nuts and bolts, and then you can tell me where the staggering element comes in and the controversy. A couple of days ago, Laura Enever was deemed the largest, having ridden the largest paddle-in wave by a female ever. It took place on January 22nd, 2023 on the outer reefs off of Oahu. The wave was deemed to be measured at 43.6 feet in height, equal to 13.3 meters. This broke the record that was previously held by Andrea Moeller for a wave that she rode in 2016 at Piahi, which was measured 42 feet. So Laura Enever's wave on Oahu was 1.5 feet taller than Andrea Moeller's. Therefore, she is now the new Guinness Book record holder. Congratulations, Laura Enever. What's happened since?
Huge congratulations to Laura Enever, and nothing against her at all. Laura Enever is a inspiring story, particularly I think for anyone who's followed her career. Like, she didn't come up a like big wave charger. She was a like real standard. I remember when I called the Surf Girl, whatever, Swatch Pro way back when with my wonderful friend Paul Evans in France. Laura was like just, yeah, in the draw, like a ripping surfer, and then kind of transitioned to WSL, announcer. But in that time has also taken on big waves as like a real challenge and is exceptional. Like it's great what she's done, and tip of the cap. The whole, I think, brouhaha, the mess that's unfolding is the World Surf League's, of course, involvement. So this looks like a Guinness World Record thing, right?
Does.
Does to me. It is actually the World Surf League who is the gatekeeper here. So the World Surf League scientists, they are on the World Surf League, they are World Surf League paid scientists, are the ones who actually judge wave height. So the only way into the Guinness World Record thing is through the World Surf League. You have to submit to the World Surf League. They take their scientists and put their scientists on it to judge, and then, you know, submit what they say to Guinness. And Guinness obviously doesn't hire their own surf judges to look at it. They just verify it. Again, all fine and good, except for when there has been past, let's say, like wild possible misuse of this. For example, we all recall 3 years ago when Maya Gabeira beat Justine DuPont for Ride of the Year at the WXL Big Wave Awards. So back then, the World Surf League owned the WXL Big Wave Awards. Now they don't anymore, right? I think Bill Sharp, if I recall, has taken it back, and it's independent from the World Surf League. Then it was World Surf League. So the judges, I have inside source on this, the judges had all deemed Justine DuPont's wave to be the winner, right? Because Maya fell on hers, essentially. Jessie Miley Dyer came in and said no. She took both waves, or took Maya's wave, sent it to these WSL scientists, had them certify and verify Maya as his biggest and also a Guinness record holder, told the judges to change their vote and force them to pick Maya instead. That is World Surf League's Jessie Miley Dyer who did that. And then moving on, you know, like, I think it all is very duplicitous in terms of the World Surf League being able to pick and choose who they're going to look at. So Justine spoke out after that, right? She said, basically called it the World Shame League, more or less. And so she was just at Cortez Bank riding a monster, of course, towed in, but still, that wave wasn't even looked at by the World Surf League. It wasn't examined for biggest towing wave, you know, of the year or Guinness record by a female, anything, nothing. Don't even look at it. So it feels like the World Surf League, as they do, and as is part, I think, of their history of playing favorites and being very selective with what they're going to look at and what they're going to push forward, which, again, I mean, I think the World Surf League is like horribly corrupt throughout, and yet they think they're doing good and so are blind to their own wild corruption, where at the end of the day, a World Surf League employee won the $100,000 and the title and all this. And so it's all good for the World Surf League. It seems nasty.
So, well, let's clarify a couple of things. The ride at Nazare from years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, which they deemed Maya being larger, also won a Guinness record that year. It's a tow wave. So the distinction is tow waves versus paddle waves this year. But why would the WSL want, let's say, Maya to win that over Justine? What's their investment in Maya?
I mean, if I'm sitting from the outside, I don't know anything here, but let's just sitting from the outside, Maya's cuter, you know, like Justine is not as cute. I'll just put it that way. Marketable, exactly. Maya's and same with Laura. Laura, you have a beautifully marketable, you know, woman.
Well, she's a WSL employee, so that one's a lot easier to define, I think.
But both. I think Maya, for the WSL, they're like thinking, who do we want to be the face of this thing?
Yeah. And well, so the other thing that I was thinking was Maya has a bunch of mainstream moneyed sponsors that either currently have partnerships with the WSL or at least have in the past and may in the future. And Red Bull was one of her main. So it's like, if they are, you know,
marketable.
Yeah, it's more marketable in general, the Maya thing at the time.
Yes.
And not only, I guess I didn't know your inside info about the scientists actually identifying Maya's wave as being larger, or I'm sorry, Justine's wave as being larger in that exchange. But I remember assessing.
The judges did. The judges who have been judging big wave surfing forever, right?
Got it.
Since the beginning, deemed Justine's wave, you know, to fit the criteria, whatever like their criteria is. And it wasn't, you know, there was no scale. And then all of a sudden science comes in. Where in the world, like to treat big wave measurement like an exact science is asinine to begin with. And the fact that, I mean, it's just like, yeah.
Well, I'll get into that too, because I fully agree that is kind of the stop point before you even get into any of the other conversations that we're having. It's impossible to objectively measure, you know?
Yeah.
But when I did assess those two waves, Maya versus Justine at Nazare, I remember absolutely deeming Justine the winner because her wave was more vertical. It was
Yep.
more of like an actually barreling wave. And Justine's was like a big mush burger. So there was no trough on the wave. And it was really hard to even define where the peak of that wave was because it was just kind of falling on itself, kind of crumbling behind her. And then the final detail was that she did fall. She gets overrun by the whitewash. So she's on this kind of cascading mush burger, and Justine's on this kind of barreling, wave that was a little bit more definable, but also just more critical and more intense of a ride, more energy moving essentially, and looked taller to me. And which is kind of the main thing that mattered there. So yeah, I thought that Justine got robbed there. And my assessment at the time too was like, well, Maya is absolutely more marketable. She has a larger profile. This kind of bodes better for the WSL. So that's why they're running with it. But the way that I felt coming out of that and the way that I feel about this is that, well, now I can't trust you.
Yeah.
Like essentially you guys just kind of making a mockery of the Guinness Book of World Records by just choosing to do what suits what you think are your best business interests, and presuming that because it is subjective, that nobody would have an opinion about it and nobody would be savvy enough to understand the nuance of the difference here. Now I can't trust you guys at all. Now I can't pay any attention to this, and anything you say moving forward is pointless. So when they go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, completely on that. I mean, on that exact note too, it looks like this is a whole third party thing that has nothing to do with the World Surf League, that the Guinness Book of World Records this is all them, right? So Guinness gives the World Surf League cover, but literally in the rules, which I'm going to publish today, it's all, if you have a big wave, you send it in to the World Surf League and then the World Surf League is who certifies it and then takes it to Guinness.
So they're the gatekeeper for the Guinness Book of World Records, which makes sense from the Guinness Book of World Records standpoint.
They don't want to mess with it. They don't care.
They're like, this is the World Surf League. This is the NFL of this sport. And so why wouldn't we just let them feed it to us? But you're right. I mean, knowing what you and I know, it does look very suspicious. So Laura Enever is an employee of the WSL. Let's start with that. And when I look at her wave versus the current or the previous holder's wave, Andrea Muller's wave, there's an undefinable difference between the two. And by the way, the number that they came up with scientifically is 18 inches difference, which is asinine to think that you can measure a wave from Jaws, compare it to a wave from the outer reefs, and identify an 18-inch difference. What else is crazy is that you don't even have to be a genius to know that the height is changing in every undulation of water. Like a wave is an 8-foot, what we refer to as an 8-foot wave. It's not 8 foot from the beginning to the end. It's kind of constantly jostling and moving and bumping, and like it's never definable. So maybe they are going to argue back and say, we're looking at all the video footage from multiple angles, which they do say, and we're isolating it at its highest moment, and then somehow coming up with a measurement. But even that is, I would argue, virtually impossible to do from Pe'ahi to the Outer Banks, the Outer Reefs.
Not virtually. I'm going to say it is full stop impossible to get. I mean, I will say you could probably get within I'll give you a 3-foot margin of error, right? Like 3 feet, you could probably get in there. Maybe
6 feet. Once you're in that 50 to 60 foot range, the margin of error is greater. I think it's a 6 to 8 foot margin of error.
Sure, great. But to have it an 18-inch margin, and not that this is immaterial, right? Like Muller now lost the record, and maybe it wasn't a big deal to her. Maybe it was. Maybe she could use it in marketing herself, right? Getting her current world, Guinness World Record holder. So it's not just for nothing, right? It's not that this doesn't matter. It probably does matter a ton to certain individuals. And the World Surf League being able to pick and choose based on 18 inches, it is just not only duplicitous, it is insane. And it is them pushing it as legitimate. I mean, it just shows, again, it is that organization, and I don't think it's purposefully corrupt, the World Surf League, but is so rotted by ignorance and stupidity and
self-interest.
All of these things are combined ignorance, ego, pride, arrogance, self-interest, more stupidity. Like, and you have just this stew of this, just the stinkiest, rottenest organization on earth.
Well, as with any other version of pride and arrogance, it undercuts their own self-interest. And that's where I get constantly annoyed by this, which is I don't think that you can objectively measure waves full stop, like height of waves. But you guys are claiming that you can and kind of, making it very important that you're able to do this. But then you're doing it in the shoddiest way possible, where it's super transparent that it's only for your own marketing efforts. Now you've disregarded the entire thing. Like, I hold this thing sacred, but I, in that, understand that there's no objective way to do it. You're coming in and saying, we can objectively do this. We're going to deem awards. We're going to pay money. We're going to get sponsors to support it, to kind of drive interest to the sport, but we're going to do it with a house of cards.
I mean,
and then that's where I feel offended by it.
And back to the old way the WXL Awards used to be judged. It was a panel of people who have been doing this forever, who both surf big waves, been around big waves, are big wave people, right? They wouldn't get a scientist in there and say, we can look at, They would eyeball it. They've all been to these places. They all know these places. They know what a wave is like at Nazare versus a wave is like at Jaws. And they, of course, it's not objective. But when you get a group of people, a group of knowledgeable people who have been out there and they all decide on something, give me that over science any day of the week in terms of this, right? Like, these guys actually know, or guys and girls actually know. Like, I want Kayla Kenley on a panel to tell me. I don't want whoever scientist bro with his computer software telling me where the trough is, right? Like, right. I mean, so the World Surf League even undermining like the way it should be done, that's the way it should be done. And what, you can give a Guinness Book of World Records, like, give me that panel's recommendation for who gets the Guinness Book of World Records, to say nothing of the fact that we already talked about Maya not riding out. Laura didn't ride out either at all.
Like, nor did Andrea Moeller, by the way.
Yeah, it wasn't even close to getting gobbled by the whitewash or whatever, on the shoulder after much of the ride was done. And again, nothing against Laura's wave. It's incredible, but she got gobbled on the drop.
Yeah. She made it to the bottom of the drop and then got overrun. But yeah, it wasn't out on the shoulder or anything like that.
No, she didn't even, she didn't make a turn.
That's where the conversation about height, like, how do you even find the trough on that wave? I see where you could find the peak, or the highest part of the wave, but how do you define the trough? And that's where scientists have almost no say in this. And Keala Kenley does, or Laura Enever does too, because where the energy dissipates. If you've ever done a bottom turn, where the energy dissipates, and so Laura kind of finding where that line is as she makes that drop and then tries to push off the bottom, that would be the definable trough. But I watched that footage from all the angles that the WSL used and the Guinness Book used, and it's like, I don't know where I would place that line, of the trough of the wave, because there's so much slope still going.
Within inches, 18 inches.
Right. Like, there's not 18 inches of grace there. There's
really not
10 yards probably.
Yeah.
So let me just read for the record the WSL's criteria for measurement. They said, quote, a team of scientists and engineers collaborated on the corroborated on the analysis using a range of wave measuring techniques, including video footage, detailed information about the site, location of the videographers, and location of the wave to determine the wave height. Several frames from the video footage were extracted and geometrically corrected based on camera positions and angles. Using known objects, such as skis and the actual measurement of Enever's body geometry, it was possible to calibrate the image for conversion from pixels to feet. The location of the trough and the crest of the wave was determined from analysis of the video from 2 different angles. That all sounds like noble pursuits. That's how you would break it down, but it's not. It still doesn't come. It's a kind of a futile effort.
And it also does not say in there that those scientists are being paid by the World Surf League, right? Which, it's not an independent body who like is, you know, verifies this stuff. So of course, whatever World Surf League is going to cough up 100 grand. This is all marketing for them anyway. World Surf League is not a non-profit. You know, World Surf League is in the interest of enriching itself, whatever, making money. And so them paying these scientists to come up with something, it's obviously going to serve their interest, right? And again, nothing against Laura. It's not like Laura did something wrong or was involved in some bit of trickery. It's just World Surf League, unfortunately, by even touching it, I mean, everything they touch turns to poo, just like Eric Logan is the magic poo touch.
Laura Eniver is amazing. And of course, I would accept that award if I was her as well. You know what I mean? Like, she has no fault in this. But and by the way, the Guinness Book of World Records, if they're not giving out records, they're not in business. Yeah. And so it's in their best interest to accept this information from the WSL and then deem Laura the new winner. And the WSL's interest here is they're coming into a big wave season. And so this is fantastic fodder and marketing, you know, outside of the surf world. Get the Guinness Book to market this. This is fantastic publicity for them to enter the winter season. And it's a WSL employee. So this all makes perfect sense.
I mean, yeah, duplicitous.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that brings us to Bethany Hamilton.
Duplicitous as well.
Yeah. So Bethany, I'll give people again the rundown real quick, and then you can kind of break it down. And the inside info that we have here is that your wife, as an athlete manager, managed Bethany Hamilton for some time, didn't she?
She did.
Did you get her take on this story?
I didn't. The wife's?
Yeah.
She had nothing. It was all news to her. So like she didn't have an inside.
Okay. No comment from Cersei Wallace.
No comment from Cersei Wallace.
So the news here is that Bethany Hamilton, after a 24-year partnership with the surfwear brand Rip Curl, has mutually agreed to break the contract. So apparently her and Rip Curl both agreed that they would break her contract. She had just signed a 5-year contract in January of 2022. So that would mean that the contract was in place until January 2027. But in February of 2023, Bethany posted on Instagram a video in opposition to the WSL's newly released transgender policy, which stated that the WSL adopted the ISA's policy on transgender participation, meaning that transgender surfers are allowed to compete in their identifying gender category. So Bethany Hamilton is not a CT athlete with the WSL, but she does compete in WSL events as a wild card fairly frequently. I'd say once a year. And so she took to Instagram to basically oppose this policy. And there was no threat, by the way, at the time of any transgender female who wanted to compete in a WSL event, but Bethany was taking a stance and just saying that she essentially thought that the rule was unfair to biological women. That was her stance. Let me see. Stab reported on this, and they said that this reportedly did not sit well with Rip Curl, who pride themselves in being inclusive. Bethany also stated that she would no longer compete in WSL events unless this rule was amended. So Stab's innuendo there is that this did not sit well with Rip Curl. We don't know that for a fact. Rip Curl made no public statement, but they do sponsor a couple of WSL events, and they certainly are partnered with the WSL for long term. And one of those events was in Portugal, where they were celebrating female, I forget what it was, like female something day or month, International Women's Month or Day is what it was. And so the athletes, both male and female, were asked to select a surfer who they admire, a female surfer who they admire, and they would put that name on the back of their jerseys. Betty Lou Sakura Johnson on the women's side and Nat Young on the men's side both elected to put Bethany Hamilton's name on the back of their jersey, and they were told by the WSL that they are not allowed to. That effectively, Bethany, you can pick anybody other than Bethany, basically, because she made this stance against us publicly on Instagram. We are not going to propagate her name. So those surfers picked different names and moved forward. But it's important to note because that event was sponsored by Rip Curl. And so there seems to be, a tacit agreement on Rip Curl's behalf for that decision. Then 3 months ago, Rip Curl launched a campaign entitled Summer Looks Good on You, which featured Sasha Jane Lowerson, the first trans woman to compete and win an event, the current, or at the time, the Western Australian longboard champion. So she's a transgender woman competing in the women's division to win that title. So all of this is to say, these are the reported kind of or the suspected alleged ideological conflicts that came to a head and created this split between Bethany and Rip Curl. Stab Magazine also reported that Bethany would be not being paid for the last 3 years on this contract, which can be presumed, we don't know the numbers, but can be presumed to be a couple $100,000 a year for 3 years. So let's say a total of $500,000 to $750,000 left on the table. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that good on Stab for getting some good journalism going there. I highly doubt that it was a mutual parting of ways. I mean, I think at some point they probably both agreed to something, but I would imagine that there was some money changed hands, et cetera, et cetera. There's no way that Bethany walked away from her contract. And there seems to be a lot of gaps in Stab's reporting, I will say. Like, good on them for getting it. But there does seem to be a lot of gaps, and I doubt, and there was doubt from the wife that this shook out on the surface as Stab made it appear to shake out.
So Stab really didn't report any facts. They reported the two kind of rumors that they reported, maybe three, were that this split had to do with this ideological difference between the brand's marketing and Bethany Hamilton's, personal beliefs. The second thing being that there was no money exchanged hands. And the third was that they both signed an NDA that prevented them from speaking about it publicly or privately. So we have not heard anything from Rip Curl at all. So everything that I've stated is just presumed and alleged. And everything from Bethany's side is just kind of based on Instagram posts from February, essentially.
Yeah. And
but I would agree. It seems insane to leave money on the table. I don't think that. First of all, I think that the split was probably instigated by Rip Curl. I don't think that Bethany would say, "How dare you use trans athletes in your marketing? I'm out of here." Bethany never stated anything about marketing and trans rights or trans people in general. It was all related to competition. So she didn't say that she doesn't support trans people or believe trans people. She just didn't think it was fair for trans people to be competing in the female division. That's full stop what she said. So I would be surprised. I mean, I don't know Bethany personally. I would be surprised if she had a problem with Rip Curl using trans athletes in their marketing campaigns.
Well, and I know from my brief time around Bethany when the wife represented her, she was really, Rip Curl meant a lot to her, right? Like, there was no other dalliances with other brands or anything. Rip Curl was her home, and Rip Curl meant a whole ton to her. Like, it was that athlete sponsor relationship was one of the tighter that I've seen amongst ones that I've been around. And so
decades long. I mean, it was 24 years long. So that makes perfect sense.
And it's not like Bethany became someone new. I mean, I suppose Rip Curl did sell to Kathmandu, within the last, when was that? A couple of years ago?
Probably 2 years ago.
Yeah. So that would be the only major change that I see there. But it's not like Rip Curl is an, out and proud brand either. I mean, of course, like any brand, the Sasha Jane thing, I think you try to appeal to as wide an audience as you can, while also not poking your other audience in the eye. Like, I think it's a difficult dance these days for brands, probably, and not so much surf, because I think this issue is not so crazy in surf, but like, Bud Light and the 100 days of being a girl or whatever that thing was called, like, where Bud Light has still not recovered from that. It got like the most popular beer brand in America, whatever. Bud Light was number one. Now it's I mean, just exploded. It exploded its value, right? And no company wants to do that, but they also want to be inclusive. So I get
Yeah.
there was probably something there, but I would imagine that I can't imagine that it was just about that.
So we've identified it doesn't make sense that Bethany would walk away based on them using trans people, trans athletes in their marketing. But it does make sense that that Rip Curl would identify Bethany's willingness to be outspoken as a liability for their current marketing campaign. And it might just be easier to walk away from that liability. And so if they made that decision, it's insane to think that Bethany would walk away from the money. Like legally, they're bound to paying her that amount of money. So her management and an attorney would figure out what the number was to kill the contract. And I would presume that's what she got paid, even though Stab did not report that.
Yeah, I mean, it's precise. Would be something like that. I don't know that necessarily that Kathmandu, Rip Curl, SARS live, but whatever that decision was, you don't sign NDAs to mutually part ways, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What does it serve Bethany to have Rip Curl sign an NDA? What are they going to say, right? They're the company. It would look awful for them to tar Bethany. So the NDA is for Bethany, which means she got paid. And they probably, Rip Curl could have thought a lot of things. They could have thought we're going in a different direction. Our Bethany years were great, but we want to go skew younger. We'd like to free up whatever our marketing, both budget and time over this last. I mean, who's the hot young thing on Rip Curl these days on the women's side?
I can't. I don't know.
Whatever. But I'm
Aaron
sure
Brooks.
Sure, they could be, and they want to invest in this young crop, right? And they're like, okay, we see the end of the Bethany thing coming, and we would prefer to end it sooner than later. We'll pay you out for a portion of this, and shake hands, and off we go.
Even if they paid her the full amount for the 3 years on the contract, it's a negligible amount for them to get out of it for the liability that exists. So another detail that I think is worth discussing is you said, look, Rip Curl wants to market to and sell product to the widest demographic of people. And that is true when you're a global corporation, but it wasn't always true. It wasn't true 24 years ago for when they started this agreement. And so when we have a lot of surf brands, small surf brands, their strength as a small brand is identifying a counterculture. Identifying like a unique culture that exists, and we represent you. I'm wearing IPD shirt right now. It's like, this is Bob Hurley's shaping label from back in the day. We identify with the core of the community, shapers, individual board builders. We're going through retail. We represent you. But as you grow, you do need to expand your demographic. And so the messaging, the ideology, all of that shifts. And so I feel like, interestingly, Bethany Hamilton fits in every version of this for Rip Curl. She was a perfect representative of them 20 years ago. But even today, if their modeling and their campaign is about individualistic women and all body types matter, and you are unique and you overcome adversity through your uniqueness, Bethany is the definition of that today. So even with that current campaign, she could be the spokesperson and the poster girl for it if she just kept her mouth shut, and so that's something for her to reconcile with or identify with. Like, is it worth it just to collect the paycheck because I do align with their marketing campaign, or is their marketing campaign all just bullshit to sell product to the masses because clearly they're not putting their money where their mouth is because I represent this perfectly,
Completely. And I don't know any insight into her. I did have some with Rip Curl was always really weird. And again, the time that I got to kind of look over shoulders, where Bethany, I think at that time was by far had the biggest Instagram, I think, of any surfer. It was like one of the most popular surfers on earth, full stop. And Rip Curl did a pretty bad job of using that asset to market in multiple ways, right? Like Bethany was always included, at the table and stuff like that. But Rip Curl never went out and pushed Bethany, I think, like she could have been pushed as all the, like, her story, her everything, you know, she is a known surfer around the world, which you can't even say that about Kelly Slater.
You can. It would be an argument to figure out
Yeah.
who is better known than between the two of them. But Kelly doesn't have a Hollywood movie made about him. You know,
Precisely that, and a you know, best-selling book, except for Pipe Dreams,
not a
that turned
bestseller.
into wonderful surfboard art, inspirational
Yeah,
surf.
yeah. We'll get to that later in the show. Yeah. So my assessment of this is it's an interesting conversation to have. The reason why we're discussing it is because it is kind of a flashpoint, or it's a reflection of broader culture and its effects, like broader political ideology that's going on in the world and how it plays out in the surf world. It's also a reflection of how the surf world is entirely changing. How surfers are getting paid is just so, it's changing now. And this is this kind of interesting moment where it all explodes. But my thought on it is Rip Curl made the right decision here. I think Rip Curl's efforts to sell product to every demographic possible is the right decision for the company. Now that they're owned by Kathmandu, they have different interests, and that is a great interest. Sell as much product to every demographic as possible, everyone in the world. Bethany Hamilton, although we've had a long-term partnership with her, and even if she represents the company well, or represents kind of a lot of our marketing efforts, her outspokenness is a liability. And that liability is not worth having happen to us what happened to Bud Light, let's say. And so let's just eradicate the liability. We need safety as we move forward with this new ownership situation. So let's go with safety. I think it was the right decision for Rip Curl. But
I don't know.
I also think that with this shift in the way surfers get paid, it's a good decision for Bethany. Let's say Rip Curl's paying him $300,000 a year. I bet she can unlock a new and more than $300,000 a year without being limited by a conflict of interest of having one clothing brand associated with you. If she just starts selling individual Instagram posts, individual partnerships, individual television commercials, individual speaking engagements with different clothing companies, maybe it's, you know, whoever this week, whoever next week, she can accumulate more than 300. I think the $300,000 is an undervaluation of her.
I think Bethany Hamilton, though, enjoys her life in Hawaii and was never very eager to go anywhere to do work. I will say, she was not a worker bee.
Gotcha.
Put it that way. So I don't
Okay.
know. I think maybe she's just satisfied, right? Maybe she's a mom and she will do, I'm sure, speaking to her stuff, and get, you know, I don't think Bethany Hamilton needs to be rich. I think she's probably is very comfortable on Kauai, right?
Yeah.
And what else do you need? And so I think she'll do speaking tours. I think she'll do whatever, and that'll be it. I don't think we're going to see Bethany much in, like, being a spokesperson for anything.
Well, there's opportunities for there if she chooses to unlock them. And look, Alana Blanchard doesn't do speaking tours and also doesn't live on Kauai full time, but makes a ton of money through Instagram posts and just leveraging her social media following. So Bethany could follow that model to a degree.
I mean, Alana's a hustler, though. Alana's like that kind of influencer work. Ooh, is coal mine work, and Alana does it.
Yeah.
I don't see Bethany doing that.
Well, unfortunate then. Yeah. And well, to be perfectly honest, then if she wanted to just swap out the Rip Curl sticker, I guarantee there'd be other brands that would be willing to pay her a similar amount of money just to put that sticker on her board and be associated with her.
I mean, I don't know. It's real low tide out there these days. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see
Okay.
about all.
Well, more as the story develops. How are you doing on time today?
Good. Just the train home at 12:10.
Okay, cool. Then let's do pros in the wild. And then I've got some other. Ooh, we've got actually, let's do real quick. True grit or clickbait stuff. Quote, Paris 2024. I think this was written by Derek, so I don't know if you have insights on it, but Paris 2024 organizers may swap Chopu's Wall of Skulls for Beach Break following the Tower Furor. What is that word? Furore?
Yeah, Fure, I think, in Australian parlance.
Gotcha.
Or maybe French.
So basically following the tower kerfuffle. And the story there was that the Olympics wanted to build a new tower on the reef, an aluminum tower that was going to cost $5 million. There is a tower there currently that's built out of wood that the WSL and other contests have always used. But the problem is there's no bathrooms, there's no air conditioning. So the Olympics wanted to build an aluminum tower that had all of that stuff with cabling running through the reef and out to the tower. The problem is that it would completely disrupt the environment, the underlife, perfect, pristine Tahitian ecosystem. And so everybody was against it. Basically, all the community activists were against it and kind of essentially, I think, effectively stopping it. So the story from Derek now is suggesting that they might not run the event at Chopu if they can't have the tower.
I mean, it makes sense to me, right? It doesn't make sense not to run it at Chopu if you can't have the tower. Like, sack up judges and go, if it was good, like they've been judging stuff from there forever. Like, of course, the Olympics, and maybe people expect a better this, that, or the other thing. But why for judging? It's not like the angle from the tower. It's not like there's a bunch of cameras there, right? You get the angles in terms of filming it or whatever, broadcasting it from the channel, from drones. You can have some static there, sure, but it's not like Chopu that when we watch Chopu, we're like, oh man, this is a great wave. I just wish that we could have it broadcast better. There's never been a question about that, right? And so, if the question is about the comfort of the judges, who cares? Judges have done that forever. If the question's about having a place for VIPs to go and hang out, well, tough beans. You don't get to go sit out there. You go get a luxury yacht in the channel. Nobody's complaining about that. Like, to me, I'm stand with and happy for the Tahitians that they shut that down. Because why? It's like a absolutely pointless extravagance, I feel, that damages stuff needlessly. It's like having a great, whatever, I don't know, Toyota Camry with 30,000 miles on it. And you think, but I'm going to be ecologically friendly. I'm going to go get a Tesla. So you dump your Camry, that you're just causing like so much more waste to be ecological. I remember even reading early that aluminum tower was going to be more ecological. It was going to be ecologically friendly and all this kind of stuff. We're bullcrap. If you're doing what you're doing, it's not ecologically friendly. You are taking something that is perfectly usable and essentially throwing it away for something else. That is the definition of not being ecological. So yeah, but I could see how the Olympic committees, who are also notoriously corrupt, would try to, punish Chopu. But Chopu, probably the community there probably wouldn't even care if the Olympics wasn't there. They'd be like, great, go beach break it out, boys.
Yeah, I don't think they would care either. I think they'd prefer that it wasn't. But as a fan of surfing, it's just asinine if they end up running at a beach break. It's just like, I mean, the idea that you guys can't go sit in the tower that's been perfectly fine and you're willing to go run the event at a beach break where you can be comfortable as the viewer shows exactly how much you guys misunderstand what's valuable in surfing.
I mean, really, hopefully they understand that, because at the end of the day, they don't care about understanding that. But hopefully what they understand is that Chopu will bring in X amount more eyeballs than any beach break. And that as much as they got their feathers ruffled by this thing, their only option is Chopu, because it'll be the greatest thing that will ever happen to Olympic surfing.
Totally. And the greatest thing to happen to the Olympics. I mean, there is nothing that could rival the amount of raw drama that exists at that surf spot with athletes trying to figure it out and conquer it.
Completely. And I can't imagine the French Olympic committees throwing that away because they got their feelings hurt by angry locals.
Yeah. Let's hope. Let's play a listener line call that is also in reference to, I think, last week's show.
Hello, guys. This is Mateus for the Grit. I'm from Brazil, calling for Portugal. I have a story here that might follow what you guys were discussing last episode about getting dropped in. And be thankful for that, for our local. and 2009. I was living on the Gold Coast, and I got dropped in by a frog, and he kind of ripped the wave in front of me, and it was complete mind blowing. The vision that I get, because I could see where to surf the other parts of the wave. So it was in the end was a good experience. The wave I remember all the time, not go down the line with maybe hit the lip and be more in the pocket. So that's it. Thank you. Bye bye. Keep work.
I love the keep work. The keep work in Portuguese should be our new ender right there. Keep work.
Okay, I like it. I like it. Yeah, I love that story because lots of times if you're going to get burned by somebody, the person burning you is overestimating their ability level. But when it's a legit pro, sit back and enjoy the ride. And I love that he identified that not only did I enjoy the ride, I think back to it all the time just to take lessons, like that perspective of being up and riding. And essentially it's a shoulder eye view. You're looking over the shoulder of the guy who's burning you. You can see all sorts of things that you would never see from any other angle.
Derek Riley is forever championing the getting burned by a pro. He cannot believe when people get frustrated. He's like, are you kidding me? You were going to go wiggle that wave and do whatever little silly things you did. Once again, you have exactly as our dear caller said, a front seat. You could never get this view again. I mean, this is like, yeah, imagine, I don't even know, there's no even something analogous to it in other sports, right? It's not like being front row at a Lakers game or something. It's better than that because, yeah, so just take it in, enjoy every second, learn what you can.
It would be like sitting on Shaq's shoulders the way that you would put your kid on your shoulders. Because I'm about the same size in comparison to him as my kid is to me. And so you're sitting on Shaq's shoulders running around. He's running the court. He's making shots. He's slam dunking, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're mad because you don't get the ball.
Well, while we've talked about, when you see a pro in the wild, the amount of speed that you witness and the amount of kind of aggression hitting the lip, all that kind of, how much deeper they take off, how much faster they paddle, all of that stuff is appreciable from the shoulder, but it's still not the same as being on the wave with them and seeing where they're actually approaching and how they're angling and all that sort of stuff. So I remember one experience I got burnt. Do you remember Toby Martin?
Yeah,
Australian.
Yeah.
I got burnt. What?
He's like the forgotten pros like Toby Martin are like, I hear that name and I have like an exact picture of Toby Martin. I don't know why I know more about probably the numbers 11 to 30 ASP best surfers than I know about much other things. I wish I could just replace all that knowledge with important stuff. But Toby Martin.
I'm sad that so much of that knowledge has already I've forgotten it.
Yeah.
I can barely remember Toby Martin, but there's probably dozens and dozens and dozens of others who are super important surfers to me when I was growing up that I just can't, I don't even have place in my brain for them anymore, unfortunately. Part of the aging problem that we talked about earlier. But Toby Martin had burned me at River Jetties one time, full burn. I'm paddling into the wave with priority. He's 3 feet to my right, looks at me, sees that I'm catching it, sees that I'm going. I get up to my feet. He just strokes right in, gets to his feet and just fully goes. And I'm like, what am I going to do here? And I did exactly what our listeners said, which was just watch him. And he pumped down the line and popped an air off the end section. I don't even remember if he landed it or whatever, but it was informative for me. But I still harbored resentment for Toby Martin anytime that I saw his photo in a magazine for the rest of my life. It's like, that dick. I'm now a fan of Troy Brooks. Well, as it relates to last week's conversation about that, you and I went on a tangent of haikus. A listener said, hearing you and Chaz talk about how amazing it is that the ocean shapes these gifts of waves only for them to be sullied by your lifelong intermediates. I was struck by how poetic the whole conversation was. I was inspired to come up with some haikus myself. Enjoy. Quote, shaped by off. Let me start again. Shaped by far off storms, blown, ruined by a lifelong intermediate. Turquoise A-frames, turquoise A-frame peaks, groomed to offshore perfection. Weak arms, missed takeoff. Open-faced canvas, cut back, down carver hack? No, I'll bog the rail. Keep up the work, Mike.
Great. Love it.
Yeah. All right. How about a pros in the wild?
Let's do it.
From your neck of the woods where you grew up. Hey, David, got a pros in the wild story for you from a lesser known pro, but a pro nonetheless. I've heard his name recently thrown around since the boardroom show. He rips and he makes magic carpets. While growing up, my dad always told me a good surfer can ride anything at any time. My interpretation of this definition, while in my youthful and impressionable Grom stage, was trying to make a 5'5" potato chip work in knee-high windslop here in San Diego. However, one day I witnessed true mastery of an untraditional surf craft in a Pacific Northwest beach break, which changed my perspective on what good surfing is and should be. Sure, I had seen classic surf movies where non-shortboards were the main feature, Endless Summer 1 and 2, The Seedling, One California Day, etc. However, I never put much thought into pursuing that style of surfing until this day. When I was in 8th grade, my mom and I went up to the Pacific Northwest for a wedding where our old neighbor was getting married to getting married to his lifelong girlfriend. I am 14 years old and am just getting my first taste of surf addiction. At the time, I was kind of pissed to be going to the wedding because the waves were going to be good at home in Southern California, but I was being a good sport. My mom was actually officiating the wedding and I wanted to support our friends. So we go to the Pacific Northwest and headed out to the beach where the wedding was going to be held. And we're going to the rehearsal, which was taking place at the time. As I'm walking up the sand dunes with my mom, I got my first feeling of how cold the beach can be outside of my Southern California bubble. It was autumn, the winds were howling offshore, the sun was out, but did not provide much warmth. I zipped up my jacket, put my beanie on, and I asked my mom if I could go watch the surf to kill some time before the rehearsal started. After some negotiation, she agreed, and I charged up the dunes to get a glimpse of what the Pacific Northwest surf looks like, as I hadn't really heard of good waves in this part of the world. I get to the top of the dune, look out to sea, and it's 10 to 15 foot faces. Huge, massive, unruly beach breaks with A-frames being blown into beautiful teepees by the offshore winds. I scan the lineup to see if there are any madmen brave enough to charge these massive waves. And sure enough, a little dot of a surfer is out there, dropping in on a 15-foot cavern and getting blown out. Whoa. I watched the surfer, mesmerized and hooting at every pit packed for over an hour, getting blown out of these massive beach break barrels all by himself. Drop in, get super barreled, get blown out, get washed by mountains of white water, make it out, drop in again over and over. I was psyched out of my mind, seeing someone score heavy tubes with no one around, truly a surfer's dream. After an hour or so and a dozen or so sandy tubes, the mystery surfer gets out of the water and starts walking up the beach to where the wedding rehearsal is taking place. As he gets closer, the bride actually goes down, hugs the surfer, brings him up to all of us, in which she introduces him as her older brother. As he made his rounds of introductions and good to see yous with everyone at the rehearsal, he comes up to me and I realize, holy cow, this is Dane Purley from One California Day. The guy rips and he shapes with the Knoll family. What should I do? Am I supposed to bow? Is there a ring I'm supposed to kiss? Is this for real? I avoided making a fool of myself and instead sheepishly asked him the only question that my 14-year-old brain could come up with. How is it out there? He smiles, shakes my hand, whips his board around, and shows me the bottom. Dane replies, it was pretty fun. I got a couple of fun tubes, couple of poundings, but I've been nursing this knee injury. Do you have to,
No.
break? Oh, okay.
Keep going.
But I've been surfing this knee injury, and so I've been knee boarding with this funky board that I made. Upon closer inspection, I kid you not, this board maybe could have been called an Alaya, but not with the sleek wood finishing and well-placed concaves. It was a crude, very square, dense, and it looked like a piece of plywood that was just whittled down into something that might resemble a surf craft. And yet he was not only packing 10 to 15 foot tubes, but he was flying out of them with ease. And he was also paddling back out through the minefield of exploding waves and churned up sand. Any of those waves that he caught would have still been the wave of my life. Now I'm 27 and I've seen plenty of other pros in the wild. I've seen pros packing tubes at pipe. I've seen Brazilians do multiple flips at a wave at trestles. I've seen guys brave massive Waimea, but nothing comes close to the true mastery that I witnessed that day of Dane packing mammoth Pacific Northwest barrels while kneeboarding in Alaya with no cameras, no peanut gallery, no one else around but me and a wedding party to appreciate the show. Just a guy doing what he loves and embodying my dad's definition of being able to ride and surf anything at any time. I'm back in San Diego now, and I'll see Dane around sometimes as he lives down here with his amazing wife and kids. He always says hi and makes small talk whenever our paths cross. He even rode a board that I made with my dad and gave me some tips on how to make it better. I haven't told him how impressionable that day was on me, but I'm still starstruck every time I get to shake his hand. Keep up the work.
Beautiful, beautiful and poignant.
That is a true story. That, like, I mean, it's one thing to go to pipe and see the pros do what they do at their best, but to go somewhere like that, have no expectation and see some madman in the wild doing that with nobody around is so badass.
I mean, totally. Like and again, I think the mark and definition of like the best of the pros, right? Like it's the best Tom Curran stories don't come from Santa Barbara or whatever. I mean, there's funny ones from there too, but it's like the one of him paddling out and the one wave that the guy, that profile where it's the pro surfer who is so good and so talented and also paid, some amount for what they do, but catching them doing it purely for the love of the game is inspirational. And kneeboarding on the line, we don't talk about kneeboarding enough, David Lee Scales.
Well, it's not a part of my awareness. I mean, it's kind of got pockets like in San Diego, there's obviously a big community of it, but I don't really see a lot of it around in Orange County.
I don't think either, except kinesiologist friend who's like a real master technician chooses to kneeboard. And like anytime if I go into his office, I had to go into his office for the shoulder just not too long ago because I thought I threw it out of socket again. But on his wall, he has like, is it Cloud Break? I think it's Cloud Break. Him on his kneeboard doing a massive bottom turn at Cloud Break. And I need to ask him why he chooses kneeboard because I feel there's some reason to it. Is it the torque or something? I mean, what thrill do you get out of kneeboarding that you would not get out of standing up?
I think you could surf. I mean, the reason why they did it in San Diego, surfing the slabby reefs, was you can knife in. Bodyboarders were surfing all the slabs that surfers are now surfing before because you don't need to stand up. You could just kind of knife in. And so I think kneeboarding was a perfect in between where you can get in on really, really critical drops and get tubed on waves that those guys at the time didn't have surfboards that allowed them to do.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like, again, this Dane Purley story. First of all, Dane Purley is well better known as a shaper now than he is for his pro surf career, for whatever that existed for whatever period of time. So people don't even know that he's a great surfer. And even at that time, he wasn't a top level pro. He probably wasn't getting paid very much, if at all. And the badassery of like having a knee injury where most people would just not surf.
Yeah.
But instead going, well, I'll just make myself a craft that I can kneeboard. I got to go to this wedding up there. There might be surf. I'm just going to whittle something that might make surf for me to get onto my knees on is so rad,
I mean, anybody too who has paddled out in Oregon knows the ferocity. Like the waves in Oregon are a whole different, the coldness of that water, it's a whole different kind of density. I can't imagine paddling out on a kneeboard Elia.
Oh, I know. That's the craziest thing on 15-foot waves.
Punching through the beach. I mean, because it is not, an Oregon is relentless. It's not like here where there's a set. Now I got a little calm where I can paddle. It's just like nonstop pounding.
I know. Really new appreciation for Dane Purley.
Yep. Good job, Dane Purley. And thank you for the pros in the wild.
Yeah, thank you, James in San Diego. I don't think I mentioned his name. All right, well, let's go to commercial to hear from LinkedIn. In case anybody's looking for a job or looking to hire people, the perfect resource would be linkedin.com/surf. Tap into and access. I mean, it's already the largest platform of people that post all of their work history. Why wouldn't you tap into that if you're going to be hiring somebody? So we'll go to commercial. What?
Hire Bethany Hamilton on linkedin.com/surf.
She have Cersei send her a note.
Yeah, I will.
And then we'll come back from commercial with a couple of housekeeping items, emails, and then barrel or not. Chaz, welcome back. Would you like to hear an email?
Yes, please.
All right, you're gonna have to really put some thoughtfulness into this one. It's a sensitive subject we're gonna get into here.
Right.
Hey, gentlemen, 2 items. Item number 1. Recently, a new podcast from a rival surf-oriented platform appeared in my feed discussing the Israel and Gaza/Hamas situation. This podcast featured separate interviews with 2 guests representing both sides of the ages-old conflict in anti-Semitic displays of performative progressivism. The first guest was an American woman with Palestinian roots with a husband who surfs. Her anti-Zionism went unchallenged and in some cases was amplified by the host. When the Israeli surfer spoke, on the other hand, his points were rebutted by the Hamas apologist of a host who basically tried to explain to him why Israel had it coming. This is not the first example of the self-proclaimed award-winning surf journalist anti-Semitic leanings. In fact, he was among those who condemned Chas Smith's exposure of a certain WCT champ's own anti-Semitic slur. Other than this singular episode, it's a very good podcast. I have listened to it for years and I have enjoyed it. I found it to be consistently very funny and insightful. The other co-host is absolutely delightful. So barrel or not, canceling my podcast subscription because one of the co-hosts is an anti-Semite.
Ooh, I'm going to say no barrel. I'm going to say in these fraught times, dear listener, and I get it. I get everything is so tense right now, right? Typically, I like to poke bears and kick bees hives, etc., etc. This one, it seems like everyone's got to lower the temperature a little bit on this one. And I get it. There were unspeakable atrocities committed by Palestine, by not Palestinians, they were by Hamas against Israelis, right? Stated front forward. There are thousands upon thousands of children dying in Gaza right now. It's a fact, stated forward. For somebody not to be able to say, and especially somebody without a horse in the game in terms of, whatever, like, I'm not Israeli, I'm not Palestinian, for me to then all of a sudden speak real definitively in this time about this or that, and then also to shame others about what they say or what they're feeling, to me seems entirely unnecessary. And I've spent a bunch of time in the Middle East, so much time in the Middle East, spent time in Israel, spent time in the Palestinian territories, have had long conversations from settlers to, to PLO bros, was kidnapped by stinking Hezbollah, for pity's sake. Like, I have experience and I don't even want to speak on it in these days just because people have lost their minds. I think to have an opinion that is pro-Palestinian does not make you necessarily prima facie anti-Semitic. Also, to really want to be able to defend your homeland and your people, especially in light of Jewish history, full stop, does not make you a baby killer. But that's today, you say one thing and you are fully branded. And until the temperature needs to come down, that the temperature, it is not serving anyone to have the temperature so high that you say one thing. If you hashtag the word ceasefire, for example, you get branded as a full-on anti-Semitic, terrorist lover. What in the world is that? How do we throw away pacifism as an idea in this time? Because, oh no, okay, we finally hit the wall. This is it. You are not allowed to be a pacifist. If you're a pacifist now, you are a terrorist. What in the world? But that's what's happening. That is the tenor and tone of the time. I think everyone needs to dial down. So do not cancel that podcast. Fully disagree with what that dude said. Do not cancel anyone right now.
Yeah, agreed. I did not listen to the podcast that he's referring to, but it is that one listener's opinion that host was being anti-Semitic. Maybe he was. I don't know. That, again, everybody's own perception is kind of everybody's own perception is different. So somebody else might have listened to that and just thought that he was probing the guest, But even if that host does have leanings that he was revealing,
pro-Palestinian leanings, I don't think make you, again, on the face, anti-Semitic or anti-Israeli, right, or anti-Jew or any of it.
Right. And even if he is, you know what I mean? It's still okay to disagree with that person's ideology and appreciate and enjoy their podcast. That was an episode that clearly ruffled this listener's feathers and probably everybody's feathers who would have listened, because it's such a fraught thing. But it's okay to, again, extend more grace now than we're accustomed to having extended in the past, and look past it and appreciate the content that those people are putting out in before and after that episode,
And I think too, like, if this host was genuinely anti-Jewish, he's like, I don't like Jewish people, that's one thing, right? That's like, okay, man, come on, like, you have definitely crossed the line. But if he's saying I'm anti-colonialist or anti-Zionist and then applying that to Israel, I totally get that there's an argument that this is not a colonial, this is not apartheid. I understand there's an argument to be made there, but that is a political argument, I think. And to cancel somebody based on a political argument, again, and to make that person anti-Jewish, I think anti-Jewish is something that's serious, that should be denounced, etc., etc. Just like I think somebody should be denounced for being anti-Palestinian. If you're anti a group of people, then that can't be. You can be anti a political ideology. You can be anti a way of doing things. You can be I can be anti-terrorist.
Anti an individual that represents that
precisely.
Group. Yeah.
Precisely. But again, anything, and I can't believe that we've gotten here, and it seems very, not only damaging, but not thoughtful, to brand people all of a sudden as the worst thing. Okay, you were going to be, whatever, anti-war, then you're a friggin' Nazi all of a sudden. I'm like, what are you kidding?
Well, I totally agree with what you said, but what I meant by extending extra grace is that because these conversations are so fraught with emotion, that and everybody's perception is going to make their interpretation of the information that is being delivered different than the way that somebody else would interpret it. There needs to be more grace, because the co-host maybe didn't mean to be interpreted the way that you interpreted it. And they may have anti-views, and they may have even communicated those anti-views, but they miscommunicated them because they were trying, you know what I mean? Like, they were trying to say one thing, but they don't have hatred in their heart for Israelis, let's say. And it came across sounding anti-Semitic, as was perceived that way, but that wasn't the way that they feel in their heart. And maybe they did miscommunicate it, but there needs to be enough grace in this scenario to understand we're all going to miscommunicate, because we're all kind of hyped up by it and we all don't have enough knowledge about this. So it's going to be tons of miscommunication from every side. Let's just have some grace. Let's like you said, take down the temperature. And again, they did great work before. I have a feeling if that co-host had actual hatred in his heart, it would come out in those previous episodes, and it'll come out in future episodes, and it will be unlistenable to you in those episodes. And so you will just automatically know to turn it off. But this was one particular incident. A lot can be miscommunicated. It's okay to extend grace.
And I totally agree. And it's hard in this time maybe to extend grace very far, but at least let's just baby steps. Let's at least extend grace to our fellow surfers, right? I mean, the surf world is a small enough. If we in the surf world can lower the temperature in conversations with each other, like I got blowed up after our first pod, whatever, by a bunch of Israelis for being, you know, what I was saying was entirely anti-Semitic and da 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 da, and it wasn't at all. Like I will stand by what I said. Everything has evolved since then too, right? Like none of this is happening in a vacuum. Everything is ongoing. Opinions are changing every day. We're grasping with new information as it comes to light through weird news media organizations, right? And so what I said 3 weeks ago or whatever is maybe not the same way I feel now, and or things have always changed, but I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not anti-Jewish, and nor am I anti-Palestinian. You know, all of this stuff, like, but let's extend, and I extend grace to the people who blew me up on Instagram. I'm like, I get it, man. This is you calling me a, you know, terrorist loving pig or whatever. I'll let you have that. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you, like, whatever. But don't be mad at me too. Like, let's all go along and get along here best we can.
Yeah, I agree. And so just to answer that listener's query, don't stop listening to the podcast. You don't have to, certainly me saying extend grace doesn't mean you have to agree with anything that co-host said, but I have a feeling that you will find joy and a lot of value in it in future episodes, just like you did in past episodes.
Yeah, especially if you did enjoy it in the past. Like if you actually enjoy it, don't let one thing spoil it, man.
Exactly. Especially this one thing.
Yeah.
Well, that was item number 1 of his 2-item email. Item number 2, he said, this one is going back a couple of weeks on riding shotgun with the wife. Hard, nah. I feel I'm uniquely qualified to comment on this after spending many years suffering/managing panic attacks while driving. During that time, I avoided the inevitable attacks by having my wife do all the driving. Turns out it's no barrel. After seeing a therapist, I've developed ways to manage my anxiety. While I am not 100% there, I am no longer debilitated by my anxiety, and I routinely make meaningful contributions to long drives. Keep up the work, Cracky Onassis.
Thank you very much, Cracky Onassis. And I would only think that your anxiety got so much worse sitting shotgun, not because women are worse drivers, but I just like the control of driving to me is a way to control anxiety. Not that I am an anxious person, but sitting when you're out of control seems to me, again, not just with your wife, but with anyone else driving, you know, unless it's even with an Uber driver, like half the time I'm like, what are you doing, man? Why are you driving this way? Not dangerously, but why are you driving so slow generally?
Totally. Okay. Barrel or nah. I've got 3 that I'm going to give you, but this one is just kind of addition to, because some of these things, they come in and they're great barrel or nahs, but I'm like, dude, we did this 4 years ago.
But it's important to
yeah, I the thing is, I don't know which episode. I want to just reply to their inquiry and be like, hey, here's the episode, go listen to what we said back then, but I don't know which episode it was. So I feel a need to kind of acknowledge it here, even if we're not going to submit it as a proper barrel or not today, but selecting no tip on coffee/pickup orders.
Selecting no tip on coffee is a no barrel. Coffee is a $1 tip. Pickup order is a no tip unless there is a bit of extra effort and or you get a alcoholic drink while you're waiting for your pickup order. Like if you go,
tipping should be about the amount of effort put in and the amount of work done. And yeah, packing a to-go order is just the job.
If you're paying for it and it's right there on the thing and you pay and it's there, or it's just packing and you're walking up to the counter to get it, I'll say throw a couple buck tip on. If they're like, oh, it'll be right out for you, go sit over there and we'll bring it to you, then I'll say, okay, that is like a $2 effort right there for you bringing it to me. I'm going to give you that one. But coffee always $1, depending on the order, maybe 2, maybe 5 if it's a huge order.
So yeah, we did address this in the past. I said no on the coffee tip because I just drink black coffee and I go every morning, and it's like that's what they're being paid for, is to pour the coffee. They're not putting any additional effort in, right? But then I got lit up by listeners, and I've ever since started tipping on my coffee order. So
it's a $1. It's not a 20% on coffee. It is a $1.
it's a 10% tip for me.
Yeah.
So, but the to-go order thing, I've since COVID has gotten roped into tipping on to-go orders. And again, it's about a 10%er. If I'm dining in, it's a 20% tip is kind of the standard. Maybe I'll go above, rarely go under, but pickup orders, 10%. And I'm okay with doing that. I think, whatever, they work hard, they deal with the public, they deserve it. It's a crappy job, kind of. But here's where I now have a problem is a lot of time you're doing this in advance. Like if you're ordering online and paying online, the tip option is in advance. Then I go and pick up the food and it's maybe not ready yet, or they're rude, or I have some experience that I'm like, I would never have tipped for this. So I want a redaction button. If everything is digital nowadays, then I should be able to go home and redact the tip based on the performance.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, 10% on pickups.
Good job.
Okay. That was just a non-barrel or no. Barrel or no. Barrel or no number one. Venturing into the second page of Google's results.
And as an expert, I do this all the time for 3 keywords: surf, surfing, and surfer. And you will find if it's representative of other subjects out there, I'm going to say there's sometimes some real gems in page 3. Page 2 is usually not good. Page 3, though, you'll find the one that slipped through. Maybe it's like not a as popular publication or something, but yeah, it feels like it starts to regenerate in those back pages a little bit, and then you start going further back, and then it's just regurgitation of other stuff, right? But I feel page 3 is sometimes a little goldmine.
Interesting. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I might consider doing it. I've never ventured past the 3rd listing. Not beyond the first page. Forget that. I'm just like, I don't even scroll down the page. The first page. But if you look down at the bottom, it does say page 1 of 8,972,000. Like there's endless pages. And then I realize Google you do pay for that placement, right? So there probably is value on page 2, page 3, maybe page 90 if you actually got back there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Page 90 is real. It's back to the start of the conversation, the overwhelming amount of information. And Google does not do Google does a pretty good job of trying to figure out, but it's not even Google. Like, this is the crazy thing. Robots are crawling these pages and figuring out what you want to read. I've started writing more SEO style for Beach Grit lately. It makes you sound like an idiot. And I'm not writing for a person to read it. I'm writing for a robot to read it and say, oh, this is people talk. And then crank that up. It's idiotic. So I don't know, maybe just to mess with Google, scrolling automatically all the way to page 15 and start reading there.
Yeah. Well, the robots that you're talking about are also compiling information from your past searches and what they heard you saying through your phone's microphone or whatever. So it's feeding you what it is predicting you're going to want. And it's pretty accurate, actually.
But it's always changing too. They're always changing those algos, which, yeah, I'm all about screwing the robot any way I can.
All right. Well, I'm Google things every single day. So later today, when I Google something, I will go to page 2 or page 3.
Yeah. Page 3.
Good advice. Okay. Barrel or non number 2 comes from a headline from Beach Grit. Quote, artist defaces historically significant surfboard to make Kelly Slater's shrine. Barrel or nah, surfboard art in the home.
Always a nah. I think we've done this one before as well. Surfboard art is a nah out in front of the home. Surfboard art is a nah in the home. Surfboards are pieces of functional art in and of themselves, but once hung on a wall, yuck. For multiple reasons. Like, let's look at, love him, don't want to speak ill of Herbie Fletcher, but Herbie Fletcher's rectangles are unchill. He takes boards, he breaks them up, he thinks it's art. It is not art. It is not art in any way, shape, or form. And guess what? This is an art if you buy a painting, your painting is not going to yellow on your wall, right? The yellow that surfboards get is the worst color ever. It's like those surfboards are smoking cigarettes all day and just getting nicotine fingers. It is, that yellow that surfboards get is gross. It is a gross color. And then what this woman did with her Kelly Slater thing, not only did she make something weird that is going to be weird in a house, she painted over Sean Stussey's like scrawl. So she painted over something that was actually kind of cool.
You know how hard it is to get a Stussy surfboard?
Yeah,
It's a
impossible.
hot commodity, man.
She painted right over it.
Yeah, ridiculous. Well, what about surfboard adjacent art? Like Mark Cunningham finding surfboard fins at on the reef at Pipe that have like barnacles crusted onto them and stuff, and then makes wall art out of that stuff.
That's cool. I'd still say it's not art. Like if Mark Cunningham wants to do that and go sell it at a Eugene Saturday Market with right next to the person selling a ceramic sock coin bank, have at it. That's where that art belongs.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to distance my identity as a surfer as I got older. You know, when I was a teenager, I was like, this is my identity in high school. But as I got older, I was like, man, I don't really want to be associated with all these losers. And so I'm anti kind of representing that in my home decor. But I could see an adjacent thing like a Cunningham's thing, or somebody actually gifted us a photograph. It's a seascape and it's kind of like moody, and
Yeah.
there's swell on the horizon, almost looks like corduroy, you know, and there's no waves breaking in the photo, but it's just swell on the horizon. I did not buy it. I probably would not buy it, but it was gifted to us. And I'm like, I could actually represent this in my home. I would feel okay putting this on the wall. Everybody who comes in already knows I'm a surfer anyways, so it would fit for what their expectations are, but it's not so surfy that it's like, you know, too on the nose.
Old Travis Rice gave Cersei Wallace a gift probably like 13 years ago, something now, long time ago, but it's like a very beautiful black and white photo of, I can't remember who the snowboarders are, but two pros on a chairlift, like receding or going into the mist. And it's really moody. It's exactly that. It's not like cool snowboard photo, but yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's all kinds of surf adjacent ish photos out there, or, you know, yeah, photos mostly that would be beautiful in a home. That's great.
Yeah.
Surfboard, no.
Yeah, surfboard, no barrel on wall hangers of any kind, whether they have art or not.
Nope.
Okay, final barrel or not. Gents. Actually, I'll tell you what it is, then I'll read the paragraph. Barrel or not, going to a bullfight. Quote, gents, since reading Hemingway in my younger years, I've romanticized the idea of going to see a bullfight in Spain. Well, now we're planning a trip next year with my wife and kids, and like a lot of childhood fantasies, this feels as outdated as my lust for Farrah Fawcett. Partially, it feels inhumane to support an industry of slaying bulls for sport, but to be honest, I don't really want to see a young brave man get maimed either. And I know for sure that my wife and kids won't be interested in attending. So do I sneak off to fulfill this morbid fantasy of my machismo glorifying youth, or accept my sits-pinkling existence as a modern sympathetic male who's processing his emotions by writing into a quasi-surf related podcast? Keep help, end quote.
I have all you need right here. Absolutely go to that bullfight, but before you go, read Hemingway's Death in the Afternoon. It is it's my favorite Hemingway book. I've read it, not cover to cover, but read parts of it countless times. If you have not read it, Hemingway talks about all of these specifics. He talks about how the gore works, why it's important, how all of it, every question you have about bullfighting, and crazy because it was written however many decades ago, but still is representative and resounds today to all the questions. Bullfighting, if you accept it as such, is an art form. It is an ancient art form. The way the Spanish practices is an art form. The way the bulls are raised is an art form. All of this is an art. To paper over this art I think with modern day, oh, we're smarter now, so we know better. That's all bad, right? Is so silly to think that the advancement of humanity can go cancel out other stuff in the past. Sure, some things, yes, we know now that smoking is bad for you or whatever, right? But when it relates to art and animal cruelty, they were dealing with that back then too. This is not about animal cruelty. It is not an animal cruelty issue in my mind. It is an artistic form and an ancient artistic form, and go enjoy it. Don't take a wife and kids. But again, Hemingway, Death in the Afternoon is epic. It's a lot of it, if you haven't read it, is him talking to Hemingway talking to a straw man old woman in a bar who is asking him these questions, but it looks so violent. And then he'll go, and then, yeah, it's a fantastic book, but if I was in Spain, I'd go see a bullfight.
I'm sold.
Yeah, it is worth it. And I don't think I don't have enough time. I equate in my own life, I guess, ballet and bullfighting in a lot the same way, that the more you get into this antiquated art, the more beauty you find in it, and the more you find it kind of consuming. Where that was bullfighting for Hemingway. He didn't just go casually watch. He was an expert on bullfighting, and didn't even consider so. He knew, like, it's one of those things where the more you know that you are not an expert at all, right? Where and I think that if you dedicated yourself to bullfighting, that'd be cool. But just to go watch one passively would be really cool.
Well, to do it with the proper context that you're talking about, to just go watch it with none of the context and just participate in the superficiality of it is almost a disservice to the art itself. But to try to understand it and understand the human history involved in it, I think is almost a touchstone with our ancestors in a way that is very reverent.
And it's things are not simple. It's like, oh, they're, I think, like, making everything so simple for us, just like our conversation with Palestinians and the Israelis, thinking because a bull is getting stabbed with a sword and killed publicly, therefore it is animal cruelty. Right. No, this thing has a lot more nuance than that.
Yeah, completely. Interesting. Well, I want to book a trip to Spain now.
Let's go. Let's join our friend.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, what you were just talking about, the confronting of the emotion, like him in the email or in the message, confronting the emotion, knowing that he's going to have to go there and confront those emotions. That's all good. That's all important work to do. And so I like it. I agree with you. This is Barrel. Go for it.
Totally. And then really ponder it. Really ponder what it meant and how it felt when you're Sitzpinkling next time.
Yeah, I like it. All right, great show. I think we have a new sign-off today.
We do have a new sign-off. I'm so excited about it.
Hannah's been great. You know what I mean? Like, Hannah, she'll forever be a part of our history and our legacy. But I think it is. Yeah. Sometimes things pop up organically and it's right.
It's true.
All
Thanks, Steve.
Well, yeah. All right. Well, Chaz, until next week, beachgrit.com, @surfjournalist, and then surfsplendorpodcast.com.
I totally almost forgot. I have one thing to promote.
Promote it.
The Sports Management Mastermind is coming up. The 4-week seminar is starting November 14th. And it's by the wife, who's agent, Todd Richards, who is an exceptional, famous snowboarder, the voice of the Olympics for skateboarding and snowboarding and a bunch of other stuff. The guest speaker on this 4-week run so far are Pat Moore, who is an epic professional snowboarder, and Sean Malto, who is an epic professional skater with wonderful careers. And you can get $60 off if you go to sportsmanagementmastermind.com and use the code GRIT23. GRIT23.
Sweet.
So
awesome.
All you want about how Bethany Hamilton should be doing a better job getting rich.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'll link all that information on surfsplendorpodcast.com as well with today's show notes. So until next week.
Keep work.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for flexibility.
Yeah, no sweat.